When you get to this point in time in the season, I wish where last year you had players that had the ability to opt out of playing in the season due to COVID. I wish there was a spot or a situation, some type of clause in the labor agreement, what have you, that allowed players and teams to just opt out of these meaningless end of regular season games. Because what possible reason could you have to be excited about this matchup on Sunday between the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears? Seriously, what is there to be excited about? Two teams going nowhere, playing for nothing. The only thing that can happen is bad things, because players, these are exactly the types of games where players get some type of serious injury and then it puts some of their status for next year into question, or impacts their ability to be prepared for the next season when you have a fresh slate and a chance to play meaningful games. Yeah, I wish you could opt out of this. I wish the fans could opt out of this. I wish I could opt out of this, because there is nothing to look forward to here. You're staring down the barrel of 3 hours of boring-ass Bears football on Sunday afternoon. Who the hell wants to sit through that? Well, of course, Bears fans, because you have Bears fans that still think that this season would have been more successful if Justin Fields never saw the field and Andy Dalton was the starter from day one. Why? Because they're dumb. They're Chicago fans. What else would you expect? The same clowns and idiots that continue to give season ticket money to an organization that no way, shape, or form deserves it, so they can go watch a crappy product in a third-rate crappy stadium. Because that's Bears football! These same idiots that will go to the games on Sunday, potentially freezing their asses off to watch two teams that absolutely suck donkey dick. Bears football! But I mean, seriously, what the hell is there to be excited about? Why would anybody even truly bother analyzing this matchup? It doesn't fucking matter. Danny Dimes isn't playing for the Giants, so it doesn't matter for them. There's no potential for development there, even though it's Danny Dimes, so there's no potential for development at all. Meanwhile, for the Chicago Bears, Justin Fields isn't playing. So, the one thing you really truly had to look forward to, you don't fucking have now. But what are we going to talk about? It's a Mike Glennon revenge game? Oh, Giraffe Neck coming back to Soldier Field. Oh boy. I had to put fannies in the seats. And can anybody please explain to me how Nick Foles, and I obviously am no fan of Nick Foles starting in general, but if Justin Fields is going to be held out, which I have conflicting views on, if Justin Fields is not going to be starting, then how do you bench the guy in Nick Foles that just led you to victory last week over the Seahawks? So you could start Andy fucking Dalton? Is there that much of a petty rivalry between Matt Nagy and Nick Foles that he chooses to go against himself week after he forced Foles to be the starter? This makes no fucking sense at all. It's a goddamn Ryan Pace Bowl. It's Mike Glennon versus Andy Dalton. Two guys that he actually proactively sought out to sign to be starting quarterbacks for him at some point in time. And yet Chicago fans want to keep this guy around. The fuck is wrong with all of you? Idiots. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Potentially Mike Glennon versus damn Andy Dalton. Who the hell is going to get excited about that? Maybe the biggest subplot you have in this game is Robert Quinn being, a half sack away from Richard Dent's single-season Chicago Bears sack record. I mean, even that is such a Bears football thing. Losing football, no chance at the playoffs, and the only thing you have to get excited about or focus on is something on the defensive side of the ball with involving a defensive player getting stats in a meaningless season. That is Bears football. What else? Maybe Akeem Hicks being moved off the COVID list and you're going to get one last game of him at Soldier Field before he potentially leaves in the offseason. Okay, cool, whatever. Maybe that excites you. I don't know why, but maybe it is. But this is the Ryan Pace Bowl. It's Mike Glennon versus Andy Dalton. With two teams, two organizations that should be firing their entire front offices and coaching staffs after this season. Now, of course, the Giants seem to be poised to not do that because that's why the Giants are a dumpster fire now. And there is the potential that while Matt Nagy certainly seems gone as head coach, that the front office moves that are necessary won't happen for Chicago, and they will validate why they are a fucking raging dumpster fire of an organization. And the only good thing that can happen in this game for the Giants is to lose. And hope that the Texans or Jets win. Because if that happens, they could slide to the 4th or even 3rd overall pick with their own first rounder. A win here is terrible for them because it would take their own first round pick and potentially bump it all the way down to the 9th slot with 1 week to go. A Bears win and that first round pick that the Giants got from Chicago in this past draft with the Justin Fields trade up would still stay at the 8th slot. So the Giants could come out of this game and say if they lose, they have the 5th and the 8th picks, or the 4th and the 8th pick, or the 3rd and the 8th pick, depending on what would happen in other spots. Meanwhile, if they win, they potentially are looking at having the 8th and 9th pick. So it is clearly obvious there is nothing good that comes out of the Giants winning this game. Well, you play hard, you play to win. Nah, sometimes you don't. And sometimes it's the worst thing that could happen. Look at the Eagles. Didn't they tank last year in that Week 17 game? And now, got some additional draft pick capital. They have even more draft pick capital in the next draft. They're on the borderline of potentially being a playoff team. Sometimes it can be controversial in the moment, but it's not always the worst thing to do. The ironic thing, though, of course, is obviously the best possible thing for the Bears is to lose this game as well. Drive up the slot for the 2nd and 3rd round picks in next year's draft, or this year's draft now, I guess, that they do have. More importantly, though, outside of that, because that's kind of a trivial thing, no injuries to notable guys that are part of the future. Now, of course, Matt Nagy's probably going to look to play as many one-year contract vets that don't matter to the long-range picture of the Chicago Bears, which is why he should have already been fired, and why the Chicago Bears organization is a fucking dumpster fire. But what you want to get out of this game is no injuries of any serious nature to Roquan, Montgomery, Jalen Johnson, Kevin Jenkins, Larry Borum if he's playing, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet. You get the idea. You don't want the guys that could be potentially a part of what you're trying to build in the future to get some type of debilitating injury here, like a blown Achilles or a torn ACL, where it puts their status for 2022 in any type of jeopardy or question. This is why I said I wish both teams could just opt out of this fucking game, but unfortunately they can't. My prediction for this matchup come Sunday afternoon is lots of boredom and Bears football. You talk about Mike Glennon versus Andy Dalton, for God freaking sakes. The Giants basically have Kenny Golladay and a bunch of practice squad scrubs at wide receiver, and Golladay is suck-time tit this year. Does he even have a touchdown reception? Holy hell. And meanwhile, for the Bears, you're talking about Bears football. And their worst quarterback's going to be starting, and that's Andy Dalton, in case you didn't get that. Now, as bad as the Bears are, the Giants are worse, so I know the spread for this game is like 6.5, and, Bears favored, and I understand that. I think it'll be something like Bears 20, Giants 9. I anticipate it's ugly. Now, sometimes when you get two shitty teams in an ugly spot, these games could be surprise you grab by the seat of your balls awesome in their epic dumpster fire kind of way. It could be. But more likely than not, we are in store for a boring ass exhibition of Bears football on Sunday, where who wins? Nobody. Who loses? Everybody involved and everybody that watches.